We'll kick off, mate. We said we really enjoyed the movie. I just want to know straight off the bat how you've been during COVID in 2020, and how's things down there in LA.
Thanks. That's a sweet question. I've been really well. I have three kids under four. So between that and work, I've just been extremely busy, and I just don't have time to think about COVID, to be quite honest with you. Fortunately, everybody's been very healthy in my family, and this has been an exceptionally good year for me for work. And I released the movie, and my company has been doing really well. So it's bittersweet knowing that there are so many people out there who are not doing so well. But I think it's been partially due to the fact that I've been busy and preoccupied with other things. How are you guys?
We're good. We just got out of lockdown here in Melbourne. We'd been in lockdown, really stage 3 restrictions, so we couldn't even go 5 kilometers out of our houses. So we were really locked down. But finally,
Yeah.
just last week, we've been let loose, and cinemas are opening tomorrow. So things are starting to get back to normal here as well.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah. So this concept started from a crowd-funded short film. Is that right?
Yeah, I made in 2016. I released a short film by the same name that was mostly crowdfunded, and I made it as a proof of concept for the feature film.
I thought so. I thought so. It makes sense. How did Shudder come about recently? How did that relationship come about? Because it's just a perfect platform, and we're sponsored by them as here at the podcast, and we've just loved the service, and we've found movies like yours and Host and a bunch of others that have just come out of nowhere and really taken the horror fans by storm.
Yeah. Well, Shutter was. I suppose they got involved pretty early on in the process of making the feature. We had a sales company on board who had mentioned it to them. They expressed a lot of interest from the script stage. They actually wanted to see the movie in early cut of it, but I wouldn't let them. I said, no, you got to wait till it's done. But they loved it, and they were big fans, and that's I think that we found the best home for it.
Oh, exactly.
Well done. And hasn't 2020 been the perfect year to have a movie debut on a streaming service too?
Yeah, it really has. It's funny, because the movie has been done for quite some time, and it basically had to wait a year for it to be released, and or at least in North America. It was released in other countries before this, but North America and Australia.
Yeah.
But it's funny because they were like, "Oh, well, we were thinking Halloween next year," and I was like, "Oh, Halloween, great, but that's next year." And so
Yeah.
I swallowed that bitter pill, and then COVID hit, and then Shudder subscribers hit 1 million in September, and
Wow.
I couldn't have. It was just serendipitous. I couldn't have asked for better timing, because more people saw the Cleansing Hour and were exposed to the Cleansing Hour because of the timing of it and COVID and everything than ever would have seen it had they released it on my timetable. So it worked out for the best, and yeah, it seems people seem to like it.
That's fantastic. And congratulations again, Damien, because I'm sure that you've had quite a bit of groundswell. And as our listeners will have heard at the top of this interview, you mentioned that you've got a pitch coming up very soon. So don't worry, we'll try and press you and pry for some information. Damien, I want to ask, what was your experience about having your first ever feature film that you've directed released at Fantastic Fest? That must have been pretty surreal given your extensive background in TV and editing. We're pretty jealous. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it's pretty exciting So let me back up to the short film. The short film went to a bunch of festivals and it won a bunch of awards. One of the festivals that I went to was Sitges in Spain, and it's a pretty world-renowned genre film festival, and that was very cool. And I remember talking with Angel at Sitges back in 2016, and he said that, hey, if you ever make the feature film, please come back. So we did, and we premiered in the US at Fantastic Fest, and then we went to Spain a couple weeks later and did our European premiere there. And that was about the coolest thing ever, because it's the two of the world's best genre film festivals to have your movie at, and we were there. It was great.
That's awesome. I want to ask a little bit about that crowdfunding and the pre-production. So I'm glad that you touched on it, Damien. Here at the We Watch This Movie podcast, we love shining a light on a lot of these director-driven movies, particularly those that might be considered like a passion project or a labor of love. Obviously, in your case, in the nicest sense possible, we hope that you weren't dragging anyone kicking and screaming into the production, and we hope that you weren't like a megalomaniac on set. What can you
No,
tell our
I hope
listeners
not.
about some interesting facts for the crowdfunding or for the pre-production? Because it's gone here from crowdfunding to short film and now into feature. There must have been some interesting stuff there along the way.
Well, there are two different animals. There's the crowdfunding aspect of it, which is what we did on the short film, and then there was just sort of cobbling together the money to make the feature. And the cleansing hour. Every movie is different, so every movie is going to have a different financial structure. And for those that are listening who don't know about financing movies, the financial structure is basically where does the money come from? What are the pieces? Equity is cash. Debt is borrowed money. There's soft money that it comes from tax credits and tax rebates and that sort of thing. There are bridge loans and completion loans and all that sort of thing. So you have to sort of factor that in. Also back end deals. You have to deferrals. All this sort of stuff factors into how much a movie costs and how do you make your money back on that. This was the first movie that my company produced as well. So there was a learning process along the way. But, for anybody that's looking to get into it, I would suggest reading as much as possible. I would suggest calling up sales companies and try and develop relationships with them. And then also attend film markets and have a sense for, what are people buying? And because, if you're not going the studio route, you have to rely on international sales companies to make your movie, or at least to sell your movie for you. And there are a lot out there, and there is an entire market, just for independent films around the world. So you can self-educate for sure to do it.
Can I ask,
Does that answer your question?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, go for it.
Can I ask, do you think this film would have been made if you weren't in LA?
Do I think it would have been made? Yeah.
Yeah. Is it a harder beast outside of LA, do you think?
Just knowing what I went through to get the money together and everything, I don't necessarily think that it would have made a difference had I been someplace else, because I spent all my time on the phone. So that's how I did everything. I mean, a lot of the companies that I reached out to who actually had nothing to do with the movie were based in LA. I was trying to partner up with somebody else to, mitigate my risk. But, I think that it does, sort of superficially lend a little bit of legitimacy to you if you're an LA based company, but yeah. I don't know that it matters all that much. I mean, we filmed the movie in Romania. We did shoot 2 days. Yeah. We shot 2 days in LA, but, I don't think it makes too much of a difference.
I
do think there are benefits to being in LA for other reasons. And I actually just had an interview earlier today where we talked about that, or I'm sorry, yesterday. But a part of that is just like the talent pool in LA is so vast that, you have access to great artists for all departments for making a movie. So you'll never have a trouble finding a good grip or a good DP or something, because there are so many talented people out there. And in the music industry too. So you have like audio post and music, and it's all here in LA. So for finishing a movie, being in LA is very helpful.
I want to ask about the ending, how it came about, and the CGI in particular there with the devil, the demon, whatever you want to call it. Talk to me about that ending.
Well, first of all, I have to correct this for the record. That is not CGI. That is a practical creature.
Really? There you go.
Yeah. That is a 95% practical creature. The only thing that we did CG on it was the eyes. And we added a little bit of heat distortion coming out of the mouth. So the joke's on you, and I feel really happy that you made that mistake, because that just means that the practical effects were that awesome. That creature was designed by Amalgamated Dynamics, Academy Award nominated practical effects company, and I'm actually meeting with them next week to talk about this next movie I'm doing.
Ooh.
It's going to be a creature film with entirely 100% practical, not CG. 100%. Anyway, you know, so you know, yeah, it was a practical creature. What else can I tell you about it? The ending.
What was your like? Did you have a definitive ending like after the credits roll? What happens? Does it all go to shit?
Yeah, that was always the intention,
Yeah.
and I always wanted. I love man on end title sequences, so I thought, you know, what better way to show the mayhem going on around the world than to do it while the credits are rolling. It just seemed like the appropriate way
Yeah.
of doing it. It's much lower cost to do that too. So,
Yeah.
and I thought it was pretty cool title design with, you know, showing the breakdown of the imagery and everything like that, all the little emojis and everything.
Yeah, no, that was very cool. I want to ask, what was the experience like with working with Tom Woodruff Jr.'s company that you mentioned, Damien, Amalgamated Dynamics? Because there's a lot of practical effects in this movie, and just like Dan brought up, some of them look CGI. It must have been pretty wild to kind of coordinate and get this all done on set, be it in LA or Romania. What can you tell our listeners about that experience?
Well, first of all, Tom and Alec are awesome dudes. They've been doing this for a really long time. So in so many ways, I just kind of defer to them on like the best way of accomplishing something, because they've seen it all and they've worked on really, really big movies. And the other thing is, like, they're just really sweet people too. You know, they're like really big kids at heart. So it's fun to get in a room with them and just be creative people. And, you know, there's no you know, pretension or anything like that. It's just, we're here to make a movie and we're doing what we love. So that's really the best part about that. You know, there were certainly challenges with, you know, all the effects being made in LA and then having to ship them to Romania. That's always a thing. The next movie I might be doing in Ireland, so that should be a little bit easier to get things in and out. But the process was really great. It was really lovely because they're so creative and so talented, and they've got such a great team of people there who love what they do, and it was fairly seamless.
Okay, that's really cool.
I will say, you know, there is some CG in the movie, and you know, like the little imp that you have behind you there. That was supposed to be that was going to be a practical effect. I wanted it to be a practical effect, and we were talking about possibly shooting it with forced perspective, a combination of forced perspective and green screen. And I was going to have ADI make these imps, and it just, for cost and time reasons, it just didn't work out that way. But you know, the sort of the flip side of that and the upside of that was that I was able to get this imp that I designed, and I really wanted to, you know, I really wanted to make this monster the way that it turned out in the movie. So, you know, I got the best of, I got what I wanted, I guess.
For our listeners out there,
sure.
what is forced perspective?
It's the idea of taking, it's making objects look larger or smaller in the frame based on how near or far they are from the camera. So, you know, there's a lot of really, this is, you know, Chaplin and Buster Keaton did a lot of this in early filmmaking, where, you know, they would make themselves look like that, you know, they're really big or they're really small, or a lot of times, you know, like, you know, Chaplin's hanging from a clock, and it looks like he's about ready to fall off a building because it looks like he's really high off the ground. Well, that's just a matte painting. That's just a matte painting that's, you know, just right behind the set, that makes it look like he's actually high up in the air. Or the idea that we were referencing for the forced perspective doing the imps was, if you've seen the movie The Gate, which is, have you guys seen The Gate?
I don't believe I have, actually.
I'm drawing a blank, but it's ringing a bell. Take us through
You should see it. It's really great. It's like 1987 or something. And they do this amazing effect where they've got these little dudes, like people, like they shot at full size people in little monster suits, and they've got a camera in a bedroom, and they've got these little guys. They're supposed to look like they're only like 2 feet tall, and they've got full size actors standing against a wall, and these little men crawl out of this dead guy's body. Okay. Well, they didn't have CG back then, so how do you do it? Well, if you've got full-size people, you have to put them down further in the stage, and when the camera's up here, so that they look smaller. So what they did was, they have a locked off camera, and it's aiming across the room, and the floor looks like it's at a normal height, but when in fact it's actually 20 feet lower to make the little people who are in suits look small. And it's a seamless effect. It is bonkers, and it works so well. So what I wanted to do with the little imps was do that similar thing, put the camera further back, and then comp them into the scene, using traditional, computers.
Green screen, yeah.
Yeah, but we just didn't have the time to shoot it. It's a time thing.
Enough.
Like, practical effects is very time consuming. So that's mainly the reason why.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for the example, Damien. You know what sprung to mind as you were taking us through it? First of all, I had Lord of the Rings, when we have all those scenes between Ian McKellen as Gandalf and then the Hobbits.
Perspective.
And then another one, that's a bit boring. This came to mind. Can you remember in Army of Darkness, the Evil Dead Sam Raimi movie, where they have Ash, and he has all the little ashes come out of the evil Ash's dead body, and then they're all running around on the floor?
Yes.
Yeah, that's another one. And I thought, geez, that sounds exactly the same. No, that's really cool.
Well, in fact, Lord of the Rings had the same visual effects supervisor who did the forced perspective, and I'm trying to remember his name, but I'm same guy as The Gate, the movie that.
Okay, wow.
There you go.
Yeah. So he actually is kind of like the master of this. What is his name? Thomas something. I'll get
Please,
it.
we're gonna have to check out his work. Go for it.
Yeah, I'll find it. But go ahead. You keep talking.
Awesome.
You mentioned So you go ahead, Jackson. Go ahead.
No, please, Dan. All yours.
Oh,
all
Randall William
yours.
Cook. That's what I think. That's Randall William Cook. Yeah.
Thanks, Damien.
You mentioned creature feature for your next film. What can you give us?
Sure. It's a Christmas horror. It takes place during a blizzard, and it's about a mom who keeps her daughter shut up in a methadone-induced fever, locked behind a cage in her bedroom, because she thinks that if she breaks this fever, this creature appears. And these two kids break in looking for shelter, and they are in for a surprise when they find out that mom and daughter have a highly dysfunctional relationship, and there is a monster in the house.
Ooh, what's the inspiration for this monster? Any clues?
I guess I would say it looks like a humanoid porcupine from hell. It's truly unique. You've never seen anything like this before in your life. It is a truly grotesque, awesome, gorgeous monster.
That sounds amazing. And all practical.
It's going to be 100% practical. There's not going to be any CG on this monster.
So go again with creature features. What are some of your favorites?
I'm really, really in love with movies like Critters, Gremlins, The Thing, Alien, Starship Troopers.
Yep.
What are some other ones that I?
The same as us, pretty much.
Anything where the creature blows up, right?
Oh, of course.
If you're gonna have it, you're gonna blow it up.
I actually think that Gremlins 2 has some of the most amazing practical effects and creature puppetry I've ever seen. It is some of the absolute best. It's phenomenal.
It really is.
Yeah,
I agree.
Oh, totally underrated, especially when compared to the first film. We've been talking a lot here about effects, Damien. I want to ask about some of these crazy performances and the casting process behind them. So for the cleansing hour, both Ryan and Kyle do some really good work as the leads, and I'm sure you've heard this in other interviews, Alex is really the standout here, playing Lane. We want to hear how much of her performance was on the page and what did she bring? Because that must have been pretty wild directing her in a lot of those sequences.
Well, I mean, the words on the page are on the page, but, whenever you give it to a good actor, they're always going to give it that third dimension. And, the process of casting Alex for Lane was quite arduous. We auditioned some fairly prolific actresses for it, and it wasn't clicking for me. So we did an open call, and my casting director, God bless her, had over 3,000 submissions that she had to sift through.
Wow.
Oh my God.
And she sent me the best ones. And as soon as I saw Alex's, I was like, that's it. like it was like she was in my head when I wrote it, and she was just so creepy. I showed it to my wife and she got chills. Just this is just her casting tape, okay? And
Yeah.
so Alex and I did some work together so that she had a good idea of, I really guided her a lot to sort of figure out what's the difference between possessed Lane and normal Lane, because she had to go back and forth a lot. And she was also seated in a chair most of the time too. So it was a very physical performance in that way. So once we had sort of worked out the mechanics of what that is, then she could really let herself go and sink into the role and do her brilliant thing. And she did. And I say this with the utmost humility, but I truly do believe it, that I think that Alex Angelis is truly, her performance in The Cleansing Hour has got to be one of the top 5 possession performances that I have ever seen. Okay. And I've seen a lot of exorcism movies.
Yeah, she was phenomenal. I want to know though, when you're on set and she's doing some of these demonic faces and screams and talking or miming, when you say cut, is there a laughter on set? What's it like?
The funny thing is like Alex is the exact opposite of the person she's playing in the movie.
Yeah.
So she'll be screaming and doing some demonic thing, and all of a sudden there'll be a cut, and she's like, oh, like soft spoken, and she'll look at you and she's like, so how's that? Is that That's like, super quiet and just chill. But it was great. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. The funny thing, there was this one, the day that we were doing the vomiting, she's throwing up the black bile. We had this appliance on her face that spit stuff out of her mouth. So like it would literally fill up her mouth with the stuff, and then she could hurl it or do whatever she wanted, or we could spray it. So we're filming, and I just keep rolling and I'm directing her off camera while we're rolling. And after we did this like take, it was like 10 or 15 minutes long, super long take. And after we were done, Natalie, my wife, who produced it with me, she's like, yeah, we were all standing at the monitor, and we were like, should we go tell him to cut, because like this is really brutal to watch. I mean, she just looks terrible. She looks like she's in pain. Like we were concerned you were torturing her, and I'm glad they didn't too, because I edited the movie too, and I've been editing for almost 20 years. I knew exactly what I knew. Yeah, I knew exactly how much of that footage I needed. I need to keep going. We needed more. Because there's a lot of things like you film for 10 minutes, but you don't use 10 minutes because like the focus goes soft for whatever reason. Like there's a bit there that you're not going to use. So I just had to keep going. And Alex was a trooper. She's so good at that. She did the vomiting and the heaving and the rag being pulled out of her mouth and everything. Practically, we didn't have to fake it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damien, we want to hear about that editing process. This sounds like it must have been a huge juggling act for you. We're certain that you've got many years of experience, but to hear that you've produced it, you've directed it, you wrote it, and you edited it, how hard was it to kind of keep that consistent tone throughout production with all the excessive violence that you mentioned, a lot of the social media commentary that went into this picture, plus how you must have been feeling after some of these shoots, and then during the production, what were you doing to kind of keep things consistent?
I think that because I had done so much work ahead of time preparing, knowing moment by moment in the movie in my mind what this is supposed to be, and playing it out in my mind. The editor in me is seeing the shots and seeing how they cut together, and making sure that whatever I do on set, the way that I film it, is going to match up with what I've preconceived as much as humanly possible. So that's mainly how I did it. If something wasn't working, I would just, it was by that point, by the time you're on set, by the time the cameras are rolling, it's instinctual. It's like, okay, this isn't working. We got to fix it. And then in the editing room, I don't know. I don't know how else to say it. It's kind of second nature. I edit and I just do it, and I just know how to pull it off, and it just works. I don't mean to sound snooty.
It's just second nature, isn't it?
Not arrogant at all.
It is kind of second nature. I edit That's what I do.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. Can I
Yeah.
ask? I don't know if this is a question you've been asked before, but yeah, it is a relatively small budget, this film. If you had, let's say, 10 times the budget, what would you have done differently?
Um, well, yeah, I mean, if I had 2 or 3 times the budget, I can tell you what I would do differently. I mean, I would first of all give myself more shooting days. I
Yeah,
would have. We shot the bulk of the movie, which is pretty much everything minus 2 of the spectator scenes. One, two, three of the spectator scenes were shot in 19 days.
yeah, that's a
I would have
commitment. Wow.
loved to have had 25 days to shoot all of that. And in doing so, I would have shot more coverage. I would have shot more of what I wanted, coverage wise. And that also just to give myself more options in editing. I mean, like,
Yeah,
yes, like, as editor, I shoot only what I'm going to use. But had I had more time, I could have covered the entire scene differently, and I, you know, it could have felt like a bigger movie for that reason. I also probably would have shot it in the U.S. to be honest with you.
yeah.
But you know, with the budget that we had, shooting in Romania was the only option.
Is there a reason for US over Romania? Just because you know the US better,
Oh,
or
just because,
The
yeah. I
talent
mean,
pool?
first of all, it's at home, and
yeah,
you know, it's close to home, and then you know, the talent pool is. I mean, nothing against Romania. I would totally shoot there again.
yeah,
But you know, just being quite honest, LA and Canadian crews are some of the best in the world.
yeah,
So being closer to that would be very helpful. If shooting in LA is very expensive, but if I had that ability, yeah, we almost shot in Kentucky. If I had shot in Kentucky, I still would have been more comfortable, just because, like, also there's no language barrier, and you know, you're at least in the
yeah,
States, and there's no, you know, everything.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Damon, we want to ask, what's some advice you have for young aspiring filmmakers who might be listening to this podcast right now, and maybe advice for yourself at the tender age of 25?
I would say, um, if you want to be a writer director, then you need to practice writing as much as possible. Don't stop doing that. Practice your craft by making short films. Take advantage of your 20s when you know, have friends who have the time and wherewithal to help you out for free on the weekends or weeknights or whenever it might be. You know, I'm 38 now. I don't have that luxury really anymore. I have to pay people if I want to get them to come out.
Yeah.
So practice your craft, and then, you know, if you want to make feature films, keep writing features at the same time, and you need to learn the business. I think that living in a place like LA is helpful because you can work at post companies, you can work at production companies, you can learn about development, you can learn about how movies and TV are finished. You should learn as much about the process in all different departments as possible. And then finally, have a really good work ethic and attitude, because if you aren't lazy and you are positive and friendly and fun to work with, you already have a leg up on 85% of the people in town. And
Really?
everyone's going to want to work with you, and you're never going to have a problem finding a job again because they're going to remember how pleasant you were.
Is there really a lot of people that are not very energetic, very down?
It's not that they're down. It's just that they're all talk. They're lazy, and they don't
Right.
they don't really follow through.
Right.
And yeah, people have a bad work ethic. A lot of times they are entitled. They think that they're better than, you know,
Yeah.
being the PA who has to go get everyone in the office coffee, and you know, they have. It's just really sour grapes all the time. Like, that's just not the way to. That's just not the attitude.
Yeah.
You need to be friends with everybody, because those people that you are with, you never know where they're going to be working. You really don't. And I'll tell you, if there's one industry where you can fail upward, it's entertainment. So that
Yeah.
person that you work with, who you might hate, could be signing your check one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love it. Thank you. That's an awesome bit of advice. I'm sure there's going to be a few listeners out there who have taken something away. So thank you, Damien. One of our last
Welcome.
questions here for the interview. Dan wants us to challenge every guest to this. So you're in the hot seat for this question, and Dan knows what's coming next. We're probably going to have a bit of a laugh when we ask it. I'm going to give you 2 names, and you're going to tell us which you prefer and why. So here goes. Christopher Nolan or David Lynch?
Okay. Well,
Everyone gives the same response. Everyone goes, "Oh goodness."
all right. I'm going to say Christopher Nolan, and here's why.
Yeah.
I do like David Lynch in his movies, but we're talking about apples and oranges here. So
Absolutely.
I'm gonna say Christopher Nolan because I want to be Christopher Nolan.
Everyone has the same response.
Yeah. I want to be Christopher Nolan. You know, I love horror movies. I've got a bunch more that I need to make. But the truth is that I want to make Nolan-sized movies. That is definitely something that is an aspiration for me. I'm not happy making small independent films for the rest of my life. So, you know, God willing, I will one day be making $200 million studio features. And Christopher Nolan is a brilliant filmmaker, a brilliant writer. He's a mensch. Everyone loves him. And he's an example for me. He's also, his wife is his producer, which I also admire because my wife is a producer. And awesome. He's an example to me in every way. And that's why.
Great.
We love it.
Answer.
Thank you.
That's the answer I was looking for. Well, thanks for joining us, Damien. I really appreciate your time, and we'll definitely have you back for once the next feature's out.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. Please, you guys can hit me up anytime. I'm glad you did, and we should talk some more whenever you want to talk.
Absolutely. Before we go, what have you been watching recently? What can you recommend that our listeners check out or maybe avoid if it wasn't what you thought it was?
If you have Shudder, watch Daniel Isn't Real. It's really phenomenal. Adam Agent Mortimer, I believe, is the director, and it stars.
Wait, is that Patrick Schwarzenegger?
Yes, Patrick Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
Wow. And it's Tim Robbins' son. Anyway, the performances are terrific. It's exceptionally well directed. Great script. Just beautiful movie. I love the score. Everything. It was great. Daniel Isn't Real is a winner.
Wow. Okay. I think that might be our next review, Jackson.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
we'll
Damien.
check out Daniel Isn't Real on Shudder.
Thanks, Damien. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, mate. Have a good night.
You are welcome, gentlemen.